Welcome to Coach Fireside Chat, the podcast where we strip away the glamour and get straight to the heart of coaching. No scripts, no filters, just honest, raw conversations with coaches who are out there making a real impact. I'm Karl Sandland, your host and growth strategist for coaches. I work with coaches to help them build, scale, and create lasting impact in the industry. And in this podcast, I sit down with experienced coaches to deep dive into their journey, their struggles, their breakthroughs, and their unfiltered take on what it really means to be a coach. Whether you're an aspiring coach looking to grow your practice, or you're searching for the right coach to support your personal or professional transformation, this podcast is for you. No fluff, no sales pitches, just real talk about the coaching world from those who are doing the work and changing lives. So grab a seat by the fire and let's get into it. Welcome back to Coach Fireside Chat, the show where we ditch the fluff and talk honestly with real coaches doing real work. I'm your host, Karl Sandland, tech strategist and systems guy for business owners who want to scale smart, not just loud. And today's guest, she's proof that you don't need to be born with money to build serious wealth. You just need a plan, some guts, and the right support. I'm talking to Barbara Escolme, a property investor, coach, and former accountant who teaches everyday people how to find, fund, and finish their first profitable property deal, even if they're starting with limited cash, time, or experience. Barbara's story is a really powerful one and includes senior management, statutory sick pay, going through a tough divorce to becoming financially free, raising 4 daughters in a blended family, and building her portfolio using other people's money. In this conversation, we're going to cover how Barbara got her first deal done while balancing a career in chaos, what using other people's money actually looks like, and the mindset shifts that turn financial struggle into smart investing. Let's get straight into it. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Hi, Carl. Thanks for having me. Very grateful to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on the show, and I'm really intrigued about that using other people's money. But before we get to that, talk to me about life before property and the turning point.
So my relationship or history with property is kind of complicated. So my earliest memory was seeing our childhood home be repossessed and seeing the impact that had on my father's mental health and just like how that was a negative financial event that can have long-term consequences. So I grew up in rented accommodation and I kind of thought owning a house was going to be out of my reach. It wasn't for me, it was for other people. So I grew up thinking homeownership was really difficult and really hard. I followed the path that everyone tells you to, work hard at school, go to university, get a good job. And so I did all that. And it was at university while working in the call centre for a bank. I actually did buy my first home and I worked 20 hours a weekend to use my student loan as my deposit to buy my flat. But did not really know what I was doing. But in 2007, 2008, paid far too much money for this flat and ended up having to ultimately sell it at a loss. But that feeling of pride of being a homeowner was a big one. And I ended up being in Australia and was an accidental landlord for a period.
Just hang on a minute, sorry. I ended up being in Australia. Just like that's a normal segue. How did you end up being in Australia?
So my graduate job was working for the Clydesdale and Yorkshire Bank at the time, now Virgin Money. And at that time, they were owned by National Australia Bank. So weird how things turn out. I was actually getting made redundant because they were getting rid of my level in this department. But because we had a dual reporting line into the Australian team, the chief audit officer who managed the whole team was like, oh, we've heard good things about you. And so encouraged me to apply for a promoted role. And so I got promoted and moved across the country. So it was bonkers. But so I found myself having to rent in central Melbourne, and Australia is a crazy place for housing, full stop. Like their costs are just insane. Like I think it's now the average house is $1 million. But so it was like I was working with people who were commuting 2 hours just to get from like an outer suburb to our office, whereas I was like living in these like amazing flats. Like I was renting a flat that had like its own gym, its own pool, and was like walking distance to work, or like in the like desirable places. But I would never have afforded or wanted to pay the millions of dollars that I would have been to buy that place, but I got to enjoy living in them. So yeah, so I was in Australia, kind of working well and renting, and had this accidental landlord property because I'd bought that first flat with an ex-boyfriend. I broke up with him, felt guilty, he wouldn't let me buy him out, so I went and bought a repossessed flat around the corner and ended up with 2 flats. I was in Australia and trying to like manage stuff remotely. I had an estate agent, but they were awful. Like they didn't protect people's deposits, didn't pay me the rent, and it was just like this massive headache and trying to deal with it overseas is a nightmare. I mean, it probably sound awful.
Hang on a minute. Yeah, this is meant to be sort of advising people about how it's like, you know, it can be really good and it's great.
I moved back from Australia when I was pregnant with my daughter. I thought I'll get some family support, figure out how to be a parent, and then I'll end up going back, but I didn't. But I was commuting 2 hours from my home to my work. My daughter was like 7 months old, but I was having to pay a fortune for her to be in full-time nursery, and it just sucked. I didn't want to be away from her. So I like this property seminar and like invested in getting trained in property education and like how to do investing properly. And it was like that from the penny drops. It was like, right, I can see all the mistakes I made previously and how I can do this better going forwards. So yes, I got trained and educated, learned how to recycle money and how to find other people that would lend me money to do property deals and just how to do things smarter. So I started cracking on with like building my portfolio while still working the job. And it was then in 2020, I feel like my life became a soap opera. If it doesn't already sound like a soap opera, it became a soap opera. And it went through a horrible divorce where like lots of things just kind of came out with like storyline. Got scammed by some Chinese trading scam, cowboy builders, nightmare tenants. And it was just like, literally, it was like, every day I was like, no, I must bit my lowest point now. I've got to bit the lowest point. And then something else would happen. And so I was like, right, I can't handle it. So I got a statutory sick pay. And all my capital savings was tied up in the deals that I was doing. So went from like being paid over $3,000 a month to suddenly being on like £440 and just being like, what? This isn't going to cover like a third of my nursery fee. It's not going to cover my mortgage. Like, what am I supposed to do with it? And so I was so grateful that I had the property portfolio because it just allowed me to kind of process and deal with stuff. And I don't think I've really realized the power of having that safety net because it was like, that wasn't kind of my motivation for getting started. But I was like, oh gosh, like I'm so grateful that it was there. Like I feel like I'm grateful for I've got the portfolio, but it's like there's so many other benefits it's given. Like I'm in a blended family now. I've got 4 daughters, and they're expensive. But it's like I also think like I've got a block of 4 flats, and I keep thinking, yeah, when they're older, if they want to get their first property or they want to start a business or they want to go traveling, at least I know like there's equity in each of those that can be for each of them like allocated without worrying about I can't be there for them. So it's like I already know that they're gonna have more than I ever had. That just gives me comfort and security. Yeah, if I like to help people to do things the right way, build their own support and security and peace of mind for their future. Because not to get political, but I don't think you can rely on the government or anybody else anymore. So yeah, take control now and build your own pot.
It's a very inspirational story. I love the fact that you've got the 4 flats and it's like you could even put them in there, right? Forget the equity, you just stick them in there. But I guess what's really interesting is to hear a little bit more about how did you get that first deal done without the upfront capital? Because the bit that intrigued me and came up with the episode title was the with someone else's money. Because there'll be a lot of people that aspire to be, I want to be a property tycoon, property developer, I want to have a portfolio, but it's like, I've got no money behind me. So how did you get started and how did you do it with somebody else's money?
So I think just in general, there is these like public conceptions. Like you think to be a property investor, you need to have your own savings and you need to chuck that into a property and then wait till you build your savings pot up and go again. But I think there's different property investing strategies and there's different funding strategies. And like one of my favorite investing strategies is it's called the BRRRR model. It's like buy, refurbish, rent and refinance. And yeah, if you're buying a discounted property where you can add value and then rent it out and then get it refinanced at that higher market value, then you can pull out your money to do your next deal. Or if you're not using your own money, like I did, is you can find another investor or somebody else to lend you money. So they're called private investors or angel investors, depending on who you're talking to. But you could have friends, family, people you already know, and tell them what you're planning to do and offer them a better return than they would get on money sat in the banks. If you know someone who's maybe got their retirement, like they've got a lump sum of cash or they've got made redundant or they just got savings and not doing anything with it, then you could offer them an opportunity where instead of leaving the money in the bank and getting 2%, you'll give them 8% back. But when I started out, I was terrified about telling anybody what I was doing because I had all this fear of like, oh no, people are going to think I'm like greedy and a scumbag. So I found it easier to go and to professional private investors. So there's people who understand and appreciate properties as an asset and for how you can use their money. So they will lend you the money, but they'll want more, probably a higher rate in better security. But people out there, I'd be like an angel investor for a startup. There are people in groups, and you can meet them business networking or angel investor networking events itself, who will lend you that money to let you get going. So that's where I deployed all my professional networking skills to go to the events or to approach people online and just start conversations and explain how I was credible and how I would use their money and what they would get back. And because I'm impatient, my first deal was a block of 6 flats. That was a repossession in Morecambe. Wow. It must have been in its heyday, an old guest house, but somebody already converted it into 6 flats and unfortunately it'd been repossessed. So it was on with a couple of estate agents. I put my offer through and then it was a stress of trying to get over the line before I was gazumped or lost it. And I still have that block of flats now. I bought it for like 142,000, spent about 60 grand doing it up. And last time it was valued at 280 last time I got it valued. But now with Morecambe and Word and Eden project, I think it get valued more. But my intention is to actually title split it. So instead of keeping it on the one title, to recognize as the 6 separate properties, and then they will be valued as each individual property, which will mean that I'll end up with a much higher valuation. Because if you've got the block with flats, you're kind of limiting your lenders and who would actually buy that, because it's going to be another investor. Like somebody looking for their first home doesn't want 5 other flats. Like it's there. So that was my first deal, and I think it was because I had that kind of pain point of I wanted time freedom that I did that deal.
I love the fact you've still got that one as well. It's almost like your trophy, your reminder of where it all starts. That's fantastic.
I do joke that I'm a bit of a property hoarder. So I have flipped properties before. I can hold them and keep them because it's a hard market out there. There is a genuine housing crisis and people need accommodations. They're being able to give people that security of knowing they've got a roof over their head. It's powerful. So yeah, the thought of evicting someone to sell something doesn't, unless that'd be a very worst case scenario. And I like being a bit more creative and finding other solutions before I need to do that. So I think with funding properties, like a mortgage is one option, but there's so many different products out there, different lenders, different options. And it's like even recognizing where you're starting from, like there's probably assets or capital that you already have that you don't recognize as being something that could be valuable or could be used in a certain way, whether it's like knowledge or equity in your own home or like access to cash in another way. Because there's so many different finance products out there. I would say there's a world of opportunity with property, and it's very easy to start chasing shiny pennies, like seeing what somebody else is doing. You'd be like, oh, I'm going to go do that. But I always like with my clients say, oh, what is your goal? Where do you want to get to? So let's determine the right strategy for you and let's focus on that one.
So what sort of level would your clients normally be at? Would they have the idea that they want to go into property investment or flipping properties, or do you take people on who are already doing it and just want to push the boundaries more? What's your average type of customer?
So there's probably 2 buckets of my average clients. One is somebody who has paid for training previously or goes to a lot of seminars, listens to a lot of podcasts, watches a lot of YouTube videos, but they're not doing anything. Like they're listening to the theory, they're getting excited, they know this can work, they want to do it. But whether it's fear or just not knowing how to take those steps forward, there's the barrier there. So it's like they know what they want to do, they know they can do it, but they're not doing it. So it's trying to work with them to give them the actions and holding them accountable to push them to start making progress. Or it's a completely read somebody who has heard about property, is interested, and so that they need that kind of like, it's the education and coaching and the mentoring, like it's a bit of a blend of all to kind of get them making those decisions and taking the right steps. But starting positions, everybody's different, and so that's why it's tailored, because it's not everything's going to work perfectly for everybody. I've got one client who's got 120 grand sat in the bank, and they know they want to build a portfolio to pass on to their daughter. They want to build that legacy and have the asset, but they've got their own property trauma from when they used to be a landlord with their ex-wife and they had bad tenants. So I'm struggling to get them to take action because they're trying to get through that trauma. Whereas I've got other people who have no capital to deploy, but they've got the eagerness and they've got maybe some other skills. So it's like we're working on them to find you the right investors, and how can we make you attractive to get somebody to come and lend you the money? Or how do we find a strategy where you don't need as much money to get started, but you can build it? So you can do like what we call like rent to rent strategies. You can find a property for rent and you can then be the guaranteed rent to the landlord, but you could do like Airbnb or turn it into a multi-let like a HMO. And so you're doing a higher cash flow strategy on that property. But I would say to my clients, rather than just getting a rental agreement, if you've got someone who's going to give you control of their property, then let's get a legal contract that gives you the ability to buy that property at an agreed price. Because there's like these creative legal arrangements that you can enter. So a deal that I'm doing currently is that I've agreed to purchase the property for £90,000, but I'm not going to complete for a year. So I'm buying it for 90. So on the day that I give the owner 90 grand, I'm going to have it revalued at what its market value is, which is 200 grand. So it's like they get paid, and any money I've had to put into refurbishing it, I'll be getting back at the same time. There's a world of opportunities with property. Wow. So, when you sell your house, any profit you make on that house is not taxed. So you can, you could buy a house, do it up, and then sell it, and you get to keep that cash. So if you're not tied to an area where you're living as the way of flipping houses, I've got clients that are renting somewhere in an area that's like a brand new property in an area that they wouldn't be able to afford to buy, and they're building a portfolio that can help pay that rent. So there's other people who have a rental portfolio, but they rent when they're in the UK, so they might take a 6-month lease, but then spend the next 6 months traveling. I think it's like we're very fixated on, in the UK, of home ownership.
Yeah, see, I don't have that same fixation personally. I think it's absolutely fine to rent. I mean, people don't really say a great deal, do they, when they've got a car finance or a car lease or anything like that, or they're paying for their car insurance monthly rather than paying for it up front. I mean, people seem to pick and choose what they associate because there's this misconception that you get a job, leave school,
buy a
house, have children.
Yeah,
it's not always like that.
No, but I think the most empowering thing is to not get hung up about what you don't have. Like it's and just live the life you want. Like, I've got a friend, her partner's like a handyman for a caravan park, and they work on site in a caravan. And that's empowering because they don't have to worry about the accommodation costs. She can work part-time and be present for her daughter because she wants to be there to pick up and drop off. And I'm like, it's about creating a life on your terms. And I feel like property can be a vehicle to support that. And if owning a certain kind of house is in your goals and that will make you feel good, then fine, work towards that. But I think we have this real thing of, if you don't own, then you're being taken advantage of by your landlord. And I'm like, well, let's flip it, because actually, without the landlord, where are you going to live? Like
it's providing you a service, and you're just paying for that service. That's good.
And everyone gets all upset about regulation or whatever. I'm like, I'm all for it. If you want a landlord register, fine. If there's like electrical inspections, gas safety, fine. Because if you're a responsible landlord, they're not an issue. Like, because why couldn't you be doing that stuff anyway? And it's why wouldn't you want it to be maintained and looked after? But I
safe.
think on the whole, most landlords aren't bad. But yeah, it's like most tenants aren't bad.
You hear about that minority, don't you? Because that's more newsworthy. I guess what's really interesting is, even though we've been chatting now for a while about it, personally, I would still be absolutely crapping myself about certainly the numbers that are involved. I'd be thinking, oh my God, even if I'm getting someone to invest, I'm on the hook there for dozens of, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And it's like, how do you disassociate yourself with the figure and the accountability and responsibility of such large amounts of money for multiple properties? Because I'd be thinking, holy shit, I'm losing it here.
Maybe it's because my background professionally has been risk management. So I kind of think with anything, like, what's the worst that could happen? So say you're worried about the mortgage. Well, when we're doing deal analysis, I'm looking at what's the market rent that we reckon we're going to achieve for this, what's the mortgage. And when you take off maintenance, put 10% aside. So if there is a bill or something, you're not stressing how you're going to pay for it. You've got plots set aside for that. And you've got your management fee. And then put aside a little bit more just to cover contingency fund. And then, your cash flow. And if it still cash flows, then you're in a good position and it's a deal to proceed with. Like, because not every property is a deal. And it's like for investment, you're looking for a deal. So the deal itself needs to cash flow itself. And if you've been disciplined and had the pots, if there's a void or there is a repair, that stress isn't there because you've already factored that in. And it's the same with like when you're putting offers out, like you're looking at it to say, well, what's my ideal purchase price? With some of my clients, I have to work through the fact you don't have to offer asking price. You can offer below, and the worst they can say is no, and then you're not in a worse place. But if they say yes, you've got a deal. So it's, but like, oh, well, what if I upset the estate agent? And it's like,
That's
obvious.
par for the course, right?
No,
The
personally,
clues in the term, putting in
no,
an offer.
no,
It's not giving them exactly what they've asked for. It's not called
no.
that, right?
And that's part of like my training is like we talk about communication and structuring offers and putting things across and explain why this is what I'm expecting. This is why I can only offer this, the best price I can pay conventionally, or if they're open to it, I can offer an alternative structure, and giving options. So then it becomes the vendor's choice. What are they comfortable with? Because I've had properties before where the property's like not been worth what the vendor wants, but because emotionally they need a certain figure for them to feel comfortable to walk away. So it's I can give you that figure, but we're gonna have to wait like 3 or 5 years because currently the property's not worth that. I'm not gonna get a valuation funding based on that. And that's worked for them.
And then I guess that's where your power comes in, because I mean that suggestion you've just made there is not even something that I would have entertained when putting offers in. The fact that you can do delayed offers or delayed purchase or a commitment to buy, because again, it's not the common knowledge really, is it? You offer close to the asking price, you're chancing it a little bit. If you offer slightly lower, okay, you might try and get quite an aggressive survey done to try and bring the price down. So these skills that you have, or the knowledge that you have on the communication and negotiation, is that something that you picked up through the various seminars and the networks that you're in, or is that something that's specific to your experience that you bring to the party?
I think it's a mix of everything. I've always been prepared to invest in my personal development. So been to like 3-day trainings on communicating with impact, and in my professional job I wrote reports, and it was like realizing that one word could trigger certain connotations in other people. It's what I challenge my clients to do. That sometimes it sounds really lame, but like putting on different hats. So it's saying, well, imagine you're the vendor, based on what you know about their circumstances, what are they feeling right now, what's important to them, and to try and think of, well, what can we offer, like what's the best that we can arrange offer in this situation, because it's tough. You're not a charity, but it's trying to have empathy and understand what's important to get the right outcome. And for some people it's not always money. For some people it is just getting rid of that problem and knowing that someone's going to take it away from them so they can move forward. Bad thing about the property sector, I'd say, is the fact it is big money. There is a lot of sharks, whether it's less credible people selling services that they've nurtured in themselves, or people promoting stuff that isn't guaranteed or risk-free investment. So I always think it's a power of due diligence. And that's why my program is, there's education, because I think you need to learn, you need to know theory, you need to understand, or at least be introduced and aware of all the tools and things that you can do as an investor. But it's the coaching and the peer accountability to say, well, actually, what's right for you based on your goals and what you want to achieve? What is the action and the path that you should take, and stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and keep on your path and do what's important to you.
That's a really powerful blend, isn't it? Because like you say, you're mixing the risk into there, the communication, the psychology of knowing what it is they're looking for, plus ultimately what it means to you, because that should be the key driver, right? It's like it's what you want to achieve and how you get there.
I think it's getting clear on what matters to you and trying to worry less about what other people think or want.
And I think a certain amount of that mellowness and realization and presence comes with age as well, to be fair. I am definitely now wired up very differently than I was. I used to be one of those, I want a big house, I want a decent car, I need to have director in my title, I need to be on 100 grand plus. But yeah, now I'd live a lot more humbly. Okay, I've got my own business, which is fantastic, so I get to choose a little bit more of my lifestyle, but actually time is more valuable to me now. I mean, I'm 50 in a few months. So yeah, your life changes, and then actually what becomes more important is time and people around you and enjoying things rather than trying to race through life to earn a certain amount, work for somebody else. What I like about a lot of what you're doing, a lot of what coaches do, is help to educate people before they've come to that realization themselves about the importance of doing what's right for you, what's linked to your core values, what's linked to things you should be doing.
I agree. I think age and life experience, but I think at any point it's who you surround yourself with and what you're hearing, what you're listening to. I know when I was in my 20s and corporate career was the way, and I found it really bizarre that there was people like decades older than me that were at the same level as me or below. But now I'm like, oh gosh, like I totally get it, because like that, not having that pressure and being able to leave work at work and just focus on your family and stuff is so much more powerful. Yeah. Like it's been adjustment not having a job for me. Like it's trying to be like, well, I'm my boss. Like I don't clock in. Like it's so trying to set those boundaries of this is my working hours. This is when I'm there for clients, and having that choice is quite powerful.
Yeah, it's quite liberating. But don't you think it's a little bit mind altering? Every now and again, I think about, God, what if I went back into a job, but I'd have to get up at that time and I'd have to do this and I'd have to do everything they told me to. And it's like, I'm sure I'd be unemployable. I could not adhere to somebody else's rules. We want this particular thing done that way. It's like, well, no, that's not sensible to do it that way. I'd be the worst argumentative employee ever.
I don't think having a job is a bad thing, especially with people who get into property. They're like, oh, I need to quit my day job. Maybe not, but maybe make it a choice. When I look at like job adverts, it says like over 100 people applied. I've got tenants or I've got clients who've been made redundant recently, and it's a tough market. But I think that's why it's even more important to take charge of your finances and start building something so you're not reliant on that job.
Why do most people not start? If they're, again, I think we spoke about earlier about some of the types of clients that you help are people who have sort of just not taken that first step. Maybe they've got set aside some money and they've just not actually invested. Something's holding them back. So what is that thing that tends to be holding them back? Is it the fact that they're risk averse, or they just don't know the way? They don't trust that they're not going to lose their money?
I think everyone has their own limiting beliefs. No one's judging your lifestyle. It's not be that fine, or it's, oh, I couldn't do that because I don't have time. In property, there's so many micro decisions you can make. You could be as hands-on or as hands-off as you want. There are deal sources out there. You could pay somebody else who will understand the deal that you're looking for in the area, and they'll go find that for a fee. So if you want to be really hands-off, you can get somebody else to find the deal. You can pay someone to project manage the refurb, and you can pay someone to look after the property at the end, like an estate agent, or give it to a charity. You can be as hands-off as you want it to be, or you can be really hands-on if you love the thought of looking at smelly houses and putting deals out there and getting a deal. Like, it's your choice, exactly what you want to do. But that's it.
What I'm hearing is it's individualized then. It's always the story they're telling themselves, the narrative they're setting for themselves, or...
Money. Well, why do you think you're going to lose loads of money? If you follow my process and we're assessing the deal up front and we're going to assess the risks in this deal and mitigate them and put contingencies aside, where are you going to lose all this money? Well, I'm hearing houses prices are going to crash. We've been hearing that for years and it's not happened. And personally, I don't think it's going to happen. There might be a minor correction, but there's too much self-interest and it's not going to happen. Supply and demand. You're not going to have a house price crash when there's so many people wanting housing still. Even if they did, if house prices dropped, it's only an issue if you need to sell. If you're buying to hold, you can ride it out. I remember going to Dublin in 2010 and there was big housing estates that were empty because people lost so much money in the crash. Now my brother lives in Dublin and house prices are insane over there. So if you look at history, house prices do tend to grow over time. They stay rising. With anything, with any fear, it's like, well, what is the fear? How likely is it? I've been challenging it to say, and if there is a real fear, like, well, what can we put in place to mitigate that? Like if you're worried that a house you're buying has got subsidence and the survey's not picked it up, is it going to make you feel better if you pay for a specialist to go out there and confirm there isn't subsidence? There is always something you can do. And oh my God, if the house has subsidence, there is things you can do to fix it. There's always a solution to the problem. Let's explore it. But I think with anything investment-wise or, well, anything to do with money, people have a lot of fear. And I get it. It takes a lot to earn money, but let's really understand what's stopping you from taking action.
A lot of it is unknown. With all fears, it's unknown, isn't it? Or it's the inability to be able to see beyond what's right in front of them, which is a problem. Yeah, they're not looking for the solution-focused approach.
I think that's why I like helping people with their first deal, because that's the scariest one. Once you've done it once, and you just rinse and repeat and you go. But that first one, that's where you're going to have all the fears coming to life.
And it's great that you can be there in the corner as well. And with the success that you've had, that in itself is going some way to, I guess, help your clients that, well, this is possible. Like, it can be done. And I am being coached by the right person. So who would be your ideal client then? Somebody who's wanting to get into the property game, or somebody who's already got money set aside, or somebody who doesn't even know where to start? Who would be your preference?
But all of the above. I think for me, it's more.
You just don't care. You just want them all.
Someone that wants to do a property deal, whether that's for their own residential, whether that's for investment purposes, and someone that will take action. Like, it's the characteristics and willing to make themselves uncomfortable, because your comfort zone wants to keep you safe, but that's the biggest challenge, is to kind of take those actions that are out of the unusual. So doing the viewings, talking to a estate agent, like, they're some of the initial hurdles my clients have to get over. So to get in to take the action, but knowing that they've got that second pair of eyes, they can say to me, oh, he said this, what does that mean? And so I can kind of demystify, because lawyers, brokers, they all just use their own terminology, and it just sounds scary. Like, even the word conveyancing, it sounds like, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so whatever. It's like, no, that's just the lawyer doing the property transaction, and basically they're form filling. They're going to make sure that land registry has what it needs, but we use language to make it sound scarier than it is. Surveyors like saying, oh, this could happen, and it's like, right, okay, but it's not. Like, they've marked it as low, or it's just kind of like, keep it simple, but in an industry where people don't like to keep it simple.
Again, because it's almost like you're going off the beaten track a bit, aren't you? If you're not just buying a house, doing it through an estate agency, putting in an offer around about the same price that's being asked. But I guess what's refreshing is you're happy and willing to help people be a little bit disruptive, look at it in a slightly different way, challenge the norm, and demystify the fact that, well, it's not as risky and as scary as you think it. You're probably leading yourself to believe that it is.
Absolutely. I think it's also, if somebody wants to give back, like, you can. Property investing can be a way of giving back. You can buy properties purely for social housing to help the less fortunate, or you can buy properties and rent them for domestic violence charities, so people can have a safe place. I've worked with councils to get people out of hotel rooms into a property, so that they've then got an address that they can get maybe a better property in the future for them and their broader family, or they can get a job.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that.
It's not like you're not losing out, really, because the charity might pay slightly less market rent, but they'll take care of maintenance and voids and other issues for you. So it's not necessarily like you're losing out money-wise, but it's a very passive strategy as well. So you can just hand them the keys and leave that property with them.
I was intrigued anyway by the title of using someone else's money, because that's always like, how can you do that? Is that legal? But what I've had my eyes open even more to, and I'm sure the listeners have in this episode, is demystifying the fact that it's not as risky, and you don't have to follow the norm. You can follow a different path. You just probably don't know about these different options you've got around negotiating more, or getting investors or angel investors to get involved. And I think that's intriguing, and it's clearly worked for you, and I'm sure you're doing fantastic work with your clients. Do you have like a community, a coaching program? What are your product offerings that you have set up?
Yeah, so it's a group coaching program, or this one-to-one coaching program. But I think from having worked with my one-to-one clients, the group program is going to address some of the one-to-one. Because I think being in a group, you've got the peer support, and there's also the potential for collaboration, because there is clients who have no money and clients who do have money. And if you've got mutually aligned values and you both know what you're doing, you can always work together and do a joint venture. So it's, I think the community's forming with my groups, but it's not an open community as yet.
I'm going to make sure that we've got the links to contact Barbara, to get access to her, to her stuff. And I guess all really that's left is to thank you again for coming on, Barbara. It really has been enlightening and interesting to hear some of my misconceptions blown away, because even myself, I thought it was very, very scary until we spoke, and I never would have considered property investing or thinking about flipping a property or becoming even a landlord. Whereas now I'd speak to somebody like you to get rid of some of this narrative that I'm telling myself, to de-risk it, and then look what's possible. Thanks again, Barbara. It's been fantastic to have you on the show. And for everybody else, thank you for listening in, and we will see you next time. Bye for now. That's it for this episode of Coach Fireside Chat. If you found value in today's episode, please be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an insight-packed conversation. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more real talk on coaching. And don't stop there. Check out other fantastic episodes where I sit down with more incredible coaches who are out there making a real impact. Thanks for tuning in.